We are going live today with Carly Sullens. Super excited to have her on. I'll give her an introduction here in a minute. Let's wait a little bit, have some more people come on. Carly's in the house already. I see that. Welcome. Audio sounds good. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear my audio. Just want to double check, make sure the AirPod Pros are working. It's an Apple product. Sometimes Apple products go. So just want to make sure that everyone can hear me okay. Very cool. Thanks for hopping on, guys. I didn't get a thumbs up yet after I asked for the sound thing, so I'm hoping that you guys can still hear me. All right. Awesome, guys. Well, welcome to Litra's Creative Corner. Thanks for hopping on here. So we have Carly Sullens on today. I'm super excited to have Carly on. I've seen a lot of her images float throughout the Litra live stream, and the stream that we have going on our phones. So Carly is a St. Louis-based professional photographic artist and educator. She specializes in transforming images into photo art. Carly identified an outlet of her passion as teaching. So she's a really big teacher. She does a lot of different workshops and things like that based out of St. Louis area. Let's see here. Carly's methods help photographers push the boundaries of creativity and transform their images into emotion-evoking fine art masterpieces. So that's pretty cool. That's something that I'm really excited to chat with her about. We have some images on the iPad that we'll bring up, and then we will go over a couple of those as well. Let's get her on. Let's get Carly on now. I think it's time. So if you guys have any questions for Carly or I, feel free to check them out below and type them in. You are more than welcome to ask us anything. If we don't answer it immediately, then we will answer it as we're done with the station. Let's see if we can get Carly on here. Carly, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. How are you, Drew?
Good. Thanks for joining us today. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, you look like you're lit up nicely. I'm guessing you're using a Litra gear there.
Yes, I am. I have a lighter behind me for my hair light.
Perfect.
You see
Look at
that?
that. Yeah.
Yep. And then I have the new studio over here to my right that's lighting up my face.
Love that. The studio's pretty amazing.
It is.
Yeah, well, it looks like you have some cool little set pieces in there. I'm guessing that's maybe a couch you use for your models as well,
Yes.
potentially. Yeah, so you
Yes.
have a studio, it sounds like. Tell us a little bit about your studio.
Okay, well, I was going to get a studio early this year, and then COVID broke out.
Yeah.
I haven't gotten it yet, but I did get this fancy couch, and then yeah.
That's all that matters. You got the couch.
Yeah.
You can shoot the couch anywhere. So
Yeah.
that's really cool, Carly. Well, like I said, I was telling the people, the viewers before you hopped on, that I've seen some of your images in the past. We'll go over a couple of your favorite images that you sent over, but let's just start this whole thing out by getting to know you a little bit. Let's hear a little bit about Carly. How did you get into this thing, and where are you from, and everything like that?
Sure. So, I actually have a background in art therapy. That's kind of where I started. And art therapy is a blend of art making and psychology. So I'm trained to help people learn how to express themselves visually. I'm trained to help people learn to communicate visually. It doesn't mean they have to be an artist. So whatever they need to express themselves, I just kind of help guide them so they can create the language which is inside them come out in art forms. So I kind of did that a little bit early in my career. And then as a woman, I had children and decided to take time off my career to raise my family.
Yeah.
And then instead of going back into art therapy, I kept photographing my kids, and everyone kept saying, I want to hire you to photograph. And I'm like, well, I don't do that. I just do it for my kids. And when you hear it enough, I thought, well, yeah, maybe this is the next direction. And I have never looked back. This is definitely the path I'm supposed to be on, and I absolutely love photography and bringing in everything I've learned into this visual new world and this art medium.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's cool because you've niched into, child photography just for yourself, but you're doing something right when you have people coming at you wanting your service. So that's a compliment all in itself there. So I'm glad you expanded out and were able to do that, because I've seen a lot of your images. It seems like you're doing a lot of model photography.
and things like that, which is beautiful stuff. So kind of tell me, what's a working day look like for you? Going in, waking up, whether it's a Monday or a Friday or even a Saturday, Sunday, what does a working day look like in your eyes?
So I put a good amount of time in my work during the day, pretty much 6 to 8 hours, but I know as a creative person, I can't do that time frame all in one corporate chunk. That's very
Yeah.
linear. So I might get up and work 3 or 4 hours and then go for a walk or go meet up with a friend and then come back and work a little bit and then take time off to make dinner and then do a little bit more at night. The work will be editing photos that I have. I edit really slow and meticulously. So I might take a bunch of photos and but only select a couple of them to say these are the ones that I really need to focus on and create what I want with those images. Other times is other parts of my day is creating concepts that I want to create with people.
Mhm.
What ideas are coming out for the next photo shoots? What do we need? What kind of hair? What kind of makeup? What kind of props? What kind of lighting? Where's the location? And trying to get that all squared away.
Yeah, for sure. That takes a lot of time, just that pre-production process before
Yes,
you head into production, and that's super important, as you know. Like, if we can do catch all the steps before we start, then we will have less steps in the process, right? And we
yes,
can plan
yes.
better. So that's very tedious, and it sounds like you've got it down. What are you working on currently? What's going on these days? I know things have been a little slow for some people in our industry. Some it
Right.
hasn't. So what have you been up to recently in your work field?
So I am in at the moment, I'm creating a website called Inspired Photo Artists. And
Cool.
what I really like to do is take my art therapy skills and what I've learned as a photographer and help other photographers learn to find their creative voices and what they want to share as photographers. Sometimes photography can kind of get flat on Instagram and flat on Facebook and Pinterest because they all start looking the same. We see something we like, oh, I'm going to recreate that. I want to recreate that. And then you all of a sudden have like thousands of photos of teenagers on train tracks or,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's just so you like that photo, but how are you going to make it different for your voice? How are you going to make it different, that concept or theme? Maybe they're not on the tracks. Maybe they're beside the tracks. So you shouldn't be on the trains anyways. But,
Yeah.
um, just learning that you see it, but don't recreate it exactly the way you see it. Learn just to sit with yourself a little bit, sit with the model a little bit, create your story. And then that will be 10 times better than what you saw.
Yeah, yeah. Kind of use that as influence, right? So
Yes.
you stood on the train tracks on Tuesday. Well, maybe we're gonna wait for a train to come by and we'll be way off the tracks on Friday type of thing, and
Yeah.
then you'll get the motion in the background. Just influencing yourself, but keeping it different at the same time, and that can be a battle sometimes.
Yes.
Absolutely. No, I think that's really cool. I kind of want to shift a little bit ahead, and we know who you are now. We know kind of what you do. Um, we know who you are now. We know what you do. What Let's go into like connections in the industry, because I know that you've used Litra and you've worked with us for a while. What can you tell the viewer about connections, and why are connections so important in this industry?
I think photography industry is very isolating because we all kind of work for our own selves.
Yeah,
It's very much an entrepreneur kind of career field that has a very niche way. If you are a sports photographer, you are on the sidelines, but you're not really interacting with other people. You
sure.
know, um, portrait photographers are out doing portraits, but then you come back and you do the editing and you're by yourself again. So I think it's really, really important to network, not only the curb that isolation, but also when we're in our own space in our own heads, we get limited in that viewpoint. So the
Right.
more we can expand out, the more we can be like, oh wow, that look what so and so is doing. That's really fascinating. It's not what I want to do, but it gives me ideas of how I can take some of that and create what I want to do.
Absolutely. So, for someone who's maybe isolated and making these connections on their own, or like you were using the sports photographer example, because they're on the sidelines, kind of getting their own shot,
Yeah.
doing their own thing, and then they leave. How do you approach clients maybe in a way, because you're working with people, you're talking with people, you're telling them how to pose. What does your client approach look like?
Uh, when I work with clients or models, I tell them we are going to co-create this image together. It's just
Okay.
not me as a photographer. And I think that's something that really gets lost in this industry is that look what the photographer did or look what that
Yeah.
happened. It's really a lot that goes into a photograph, and that model is a really essential part in that imagery. So I
Yeah.
make sure they know that they're just as important as I am in that point of view. And if you feel uncomfortable with the posing or just feels odd in your body internally, I need to know because that's not natural. People are going to see that photo and like, no one poses like that. So
Yeah.
we're working this together. How is that person going to express with their eyes, their mouth? What are they going to say with their body language?
Yeah.
And then also there's another important part of that I always have in the back of my head is how is the viewer going to receive this image?
Yeah.
Because they are just as important in this as we are, because if they're not, then why are we creating photos?
Sure.
So I'm constantly thinking, is my photo too literal? Are they going to get it like, oh, that's just someone doing that? And it can be literal and that's fine. But I like to make my photos a little more mysterious because I want the viewer to tell their story in the images I create. I
Yeah.
want to be there too, or why is that model looking that way? Um, she's all dolled up, but yet she looks a little sad and melancholy. What happened? Maybe she just broke up with someone, and then they start telling the story. But while they're doing that, they're really looking at your image more and spending time with it.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that too. And something about your images, they're very dreamscapey, if that's a thing, right?
Hmm.
You almost feel like you're in a fairy tale a little bit. Whether it's the beautiful people you're taking photos of, or whether it's the color of your imaging and your post processing, whether it's the pose in itself that you told them how. I think transparency is fully needed in the modeling agency, just like you said, because if you tell her to put her arm out, or he or she to put her arm out, his or her, whatever, it might feel uncomfortable, and it might not feel
Right.
natural. So being transparent both ways, I think, is huge. I kind of want to go into that just since we are talking about that now.
Okay.
I have an iPad here, and it has a lot of your images on it. And I know we don't have a ton of room, but you should be able to see that fairly well. That was one of your top images that you ended up sending to me to go over. And this is absolutely gorgeous. First off, lots of natural light coming in, nice warm tones. Obviously, this was in a morning or an evening, unless you made it just look like that. But everything looks very natural. She doesn't look out of proportion, or she doesn't look like she's, maybe stretching too far. Tell us a little bit about this shot.
So this is a model I worked with before, Candace, and some of the models I work with, they love to come back and work with me again because I think it's just not, again, me just saying we're going to do this and it's all going to be my focus driven. Um, so for instance, with this photo, it was a beautiful field, and I said, why don't you go out in that field? You see how that sunlight's hitting you, and the wind. It was so windy that weekend, and I knew I was catching the wind in my camera, and I knew I was catching the light, and I just told her walk, pose, be more fluid in that moment. And I don't know if I told her to look up at the sun or it was just a sunset, but it was bright for her, so she just naturally put her hand up like that.
Right.
And then you just grab that shot like wow. A lot of times as photographers we're always thinking lighting, our f-stop, our shutter speed, our ISO, and then we want to pose them stiffly. But I like to give the models a general thing like, I want you to move your feet. I don't want you to be so stiff, and I want you to feel relaxed, and I want you to feel like you're just moving along on a
Yeah.
field. And how would that look? And as she's moving, I'm like, okay, just stop for a moment because something you just did was amazing.
Yep. Yeah, and everyone does something and has their own little tweaks in the way they do things in
Yes,
different ways that are amazing. So sometimes it takes, a little bit of time working with them. Or you said you'd worked with Candace before, I think was her name.
right.
So you kind of knew how she walked. You knew what was uncomfortable and what wasn't. Again, having full transparency on set, I think is extremely important. But this is a great image. This is one of my favorites that you sent me. The warm light really. It's very moody. Again, just kind of like that fantasy almost that I was speaking of. of earlier. And then I want to go into another one that is absolutely just awesome. I think we use this for the advertisement for the live.
Yes.
Very soft skin tones, very just, again, it reminds me of almost like Alice in Wonderland. Can you tell us a little bit about this image as well? This is beautiful.
Yes, thank you. So this is Stephanie, and part of quarantine I spent in my native city at Cleveland, Ohio. And I grew up on the west side, and I reached out to some models on Instagram. I just looked up Cleveland models on Instagram, and I reached out to a few. Some said no, some said yes, and I never met Stephanie before. And so we met at a park that I was familiar with, and I saw these moss, and I saw these tree roots coming out, and I'm like, how comfortable are you of just laying down? Because some people aren't. They're very afraid of bugs and other things. And she's like, oh, I love this kind of nymph style. And I'm like, oh, I love it too. So what if you were just laying there and being dreamlike, and we had the dress, and she just laid there, and her friend was with us. She was modeling for us too. And she actually was holding the Litra studio just to add that soft pop of light back on her. I think we were in the shadows. It was kind of dark. It was in the woods, you know, a lot of trees. So the studio, her friend, is so easy to use. She just held it for me. And I just like, here, can you just dial it a little bit back a little bit? Or can you make it a little warmer or cooler? Because you can do that all with that studio quick, just like that. And I can see what's happening in my camera as she's doing the dials for me and holding that for her. And I could take that shot.
Yeah, it's great. It's got nice, it's almost got some warm tones to it as well. I love the area around her with, is it water behind her?
I think that's part of the tree. Yeah, and then
it's part of the tree.
And there's a lot of moss that was growing right there.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. I love the post-processing you did on it as well. Just again, just very like fantasy driven. I really like the approach that you're getting there. Absolutely gorgeous. And it's awesome that you're able to use the studio just Hollywood style and hand hold it, and you're able to get all of those colors and have fully control over those, and you're just looking through your eyepiece, and then you can tell that person when to start or stop dialing back the setting. It's really handy.
It's absolutely handy. And the other model, Rebecca, like, we don't have light stands, we don't have huge soft boxes we're carrying around. You know, we could just walk with a backpack and be like, oh, here's another really cool scene. Let's set up real quick, and boom, we're there, and then we can just move on. Yeah.
It's all about efficiency. It comes down to that. It comes down if you don't have a big crew or even light stands at that point, it's just way more efficient. You're speeding it up for the model. You're still getting just as good of an image with if you would have had all of that stuff. So it's really sped up the process, and the results are showing. I love this because now we have two subjects, which is really cool. Let's talk a little bit about this. It looks like a little bit of a wider lens that you threw on there for this. You have, again, beautiful skyscapes, just like the first image we looked at. Let's chat about this one.
So this is in Cleveland, Ohio. So that's Lake Erie, and I love photographing there. It looks like the ocean. And these are those two models I found that are phenomenal. I can't wait to them again. Pose out on these rocks. The beach line is right where you are as the viewer. I'm standing on the beach. They're not far out at all, but it looks like, you know, how far out are they on the water? That's just kind of cropping. And the girls are best friends. They know each other well. So I knew that going in, that I could have them closer in proximity versus two models that they don't know each other. I might not ask that of them. And I asked them, would you consider just putting your foreheads together? And they kind of giggle like, that is such an odd idea. But I wanted to create something of connection. And again, I like it to be a little vague. Like, why are their foreheads together? I don't know. I didn't create the storyline yet. I just thought it would be a neat storyline, and we could all interpret that in our own ways. Maybe they're helping each other. Maybe they're just having this really neat moment of connection.
Yeah, it definitely shows. I was getting a little bit of exposure adjustments from the automatic, but everything is super detailed in the photo. To me, you're right. I mean, obviously, it looks like you're in the middle of the ocean. It almost reminds me of Two Mermaids. That's what it reminds me of, with the flowing dresses and whatnot. It almost looks like two mermaids are just meeting and then they're just passing each other or something, and they just said hi or something. So that's kind of how I interpreted your image. But absolutely gorgeous. Love the use of the wide angle there, showing the sky. Everything's in focus. I mean, your clouds look just as much in focus as your subjects. So
Yes.
I think there's a lot of prettiness going on in that image. I want to talk with one more. I really thought this was cool. It was one of the only portrait landscapes that you sent to me, portrait ratios that you sent to me.
Okay, yeah.
Let's chat about this.
So that is Caitlin, and I actually photographed this weekend.
Oh, cool.
Caitlin had a really cool, trendy haircut where half her head was shaved and the other half was long.
Oh, cool.
And on a whim, she's like, I'm thinking of evening it all out. And the only way for me to do that, because I've been trying to, is to shave this other half off. And I'm like, well, if you're going to shave it off, we got to go for it. And then we got to do a really cool photo shoot. So that's what we ended up doing. We actually did a Facebook Live cutting her hair and shaving it. And she got a lot of support, but she also got some messages like, are you having a Britney Spears moment? Or, why are you doing this? And I started to really look into how our hair as women are tied into our femininity, and really want to showcase she's gorgeous and beautiful regardless if you have long or short hair.
Yeah.
And using light and creating that moment of, it doesn't matter what her hair is. It doesn't matter what we wear. It doesn't matter how much we weigh or what. We're just all pretty in that moment, and we just need someone to help us see that. And that's what photographers do.
Yeah, it's almost as if like you look at the image, and to me that felt normal with her earrings and the stuff she had on her head and the framing. It all seemed very normal. So not once was I like, oh, her hair is shorter than normal. I was so,
Right.
just sucked into the image itself that everything went very nicely together. So I think if that was your goal, what you just told me, I think you nailed it. I think,
Thank you.
not putting a stereotype or anything on hair, male, female, or anything like that, I think is very important. So I want to move now. We've gotten to know your images. We know who you are. I hear that you teach workshops. So what's a photo workshop like with Carly? What do you guys go over?
So I teach editing.
Cool.
And that's what I really like to do, some of that post editing from my art background. I was a trained painter, and I was trained to see color, and I was trained to use color. And so editing is just where I fall naturally. What I like about Litra is because I had to learn, and I think a lot of photographers have to learn, is how to use light to tell our stories.
Yeah.
Not just one light, but sometimes you could use 2, 3, or 4 lights to really create that impact. And why are you placing it there? And how can you place it differently? And it really takes time to get that. So I do workshops on editing, and I do some workshops on finding that creative voice and that narrative, and learning how to break the molds of photography of everything we see, and learning how to just use your voice to create your story, because that's what we need. We don't need all copy photographers out there. We need people just to speak up their language.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's kind of your process, it sounds like, and we've gotten to know you a little bit through your photos, and then obviously it sounds like with the post-production work that you're teaching, everything has an intent, everything has a meaning. It sounds like you have examples to support that. But what is your favorite part about that process, whether it is teaching or taking the image? What is your favorite part of the creative process? And it could be both too.
I think my favorite part of the process is when I'm working with another model. I don't think I will ever I like macro, and I like doing products sometimes. I tried that, but I realized my soul is in that synergy when I'm working with another person, and I have an idea in my head, but it goes way beyond that idea because of what we're co-creating in the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree. I like, as entrepreneurs, whatever you want to call us, indie filmmakers, indie photographers, anything like that. Freelance is obviously one that gets thrown around all the time. Sometimes it's easy to get isolated, right? Especially in times like this. So we isolate ourselves in our editing room or whether we're chatting virtually or not. But it is nice to have that human interaction, and it does remind you how important your job is to be able to direct and just communicate clearly to the client to make them feel at ease. Because sometimes when I worked in photography studio portrait photography, specifically back in when I was just getting started. I worked with a guy who was a really good photographer. I was his lighting assistant, and I learned from him how we communicate with people, just because sometimes what they're doing on the other end isn't as comfortable for them. So whether you're shooting that model that's done it 100 times, or it's her first
Right.
time, or you're shooting a high school senior for her senior photos that are really cool photos, you have to learn to communicate. So I totally agree with you. I love that part of the process. Let's move into more fun now stuff. Let's talk about the importance of lighting, because obviously this is hosted by Litra. We've talked about you're lit by the studio now. I'm lit by the studio. I've got some torches behind me. What is some of your favorite techniques with lighting? What is something you might have learned recently? I can see that you have your back hair light coming back,
Yeah.
hard light coming back direct. So you know what you're doing with lighting. Let's chat about that.
Well, like I said, because of my painting background, I had to learn lighting, and I'm still learning lighting. It's not
For sure.
that easy for people to train their eyes. How can I soften this? What if I have shadows? How do I eliminate that? What if I want a warm feeling versus a cool feeling, or how to even tone things? And that's why I love Litra, because I'm not doing an off-camera flash where I'm not sure what's happening with my camera, or are they in sync, or are they connected, or is what I'm seeing coming through that. With Litra, I see it right now with my native eye before I even hold up the camera, and I could adjust things in real time.
Yeah.
And if I want to switch to video, boom, I don't have to worry about anything because all the lights are set up. I can do a quick video and have that constant light. So
Yeah.
it just gives you so much freedom, and it's light, and it's compact, and I am not nice to my gear. I am very rugged. So, I'm going into these beaches, or we're walking up a path because I see something interesting, and I can just set it up real quick and have that experience.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you've kind of switched from this flash sync, flash bulb mindset into now what we call like modeling lights. So
Yes.
it's real time light. You're not firing. You're not using light meters to check everything. You don't need to fire off 2 or 3 to make sure it's right. You're not kind of popping your model and she's not going blind or anything like that. So
Exactly.
it is a different process, but again, it comes down to efficiency. And as long as those lights are bright enough to give you what that strobe is doing, sometimes it might not be. If we're shooting motocross and they're flying by fast, you might still need that strobe. But everything you're
Yes.
doing as far as portraits go, I can imagine that made your life a heck of a lot easier.
Absolutely, yes. And
Yeah.
it
So
allows me to feel brave to add up. Like right now, I have 2 lights going on, but I could add a third light if I wanted to. And
yeah.
it just makes it so easy that if you're afraid to just start with lighting, or how to even start learning how to light, it just gives you that confidence to go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, yeah, small and compact. I always say this, but small and compact has always been around. It's that punch that it's popping in, and it's the
Yes.
amount of light it's now putting out, right? It's the source is now hot enough, we should say, and still small enough. So, what is your favorite Lightra product? You've mentioned the studio a couple times. Are you sold on the studio at this point? Because
I
that's
absolutely sold on the studio. I love it.
yeah,
I mean, it's a little investment, but if you compare it to other lights out there, not that
yeah,
much more. What it can do, you could have warm, cool light, just turn up a dial, boom. You could change that. You could add more light, take more light away. You could add modifiers, soften the light. I could add a honeycomb so I know that light is going where I want to. And then
yeah,
I could add barn doors if I just want that nice sliver of a light to just tell a really more moody storytelling on a
sure.
portrait. If you just wanted that really crisp shadow, boom, I could put my barn doors on.
Yeah, so you have all the nice accessories for that.
Yes.
So I was going to ask you, what is your favorite Lightra accessory and why? Would it
I
be
think
that
as a
modifier kit?
Yes, absolutely. I think especially for portraits, you need to soften the light because Litra do add a punch. I mean,
Yeah,
it may not be an off-camera flash where you get this boom flash, but it's
sure.
pretty strong. And on those shots in Cleveland, that's all I used, and
Mhm.
it's very much comparable to an off-camera flash without having to carry and lug all this gear with me.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you used just curious because you're a photographer, have you used the overdrive mode yet?
No.
So we'll talk about that off camera a little bit,
Okay.
but real quick, you just hold in the function button there, and then it actually like I don't want to put a number on it, but it makes it much brighter.
Uh-huh.
And it's only for a certain amount of time. It does that on purpose to save your battery. but
Okay,
you might find some use for that. So check out overdrive mode
I will.
on your studio. It's always super fun. It's really good for photographers. That's
Yeah,
why I
I'm
asked you.
still learning the ins and out of that studio light. Every
Yeah.
time I pick it up, I'm like, oh, it can do this now. Well, that's fascinating.
Yeah, wait till you hook it to your phone and then you don't ever have to touch it. That's really fun.
Yeah, I done that.
Yeah, it's that's really cool. So, let's talk about maybe bringing the studio out in the field. You talked about it briefly when we first started talking about some of the portraits from the iPad, but what is Litra like in the field for you? I know it's obviously it's very light and compact, but what else?
I always have it with me. I don't
Yeah,
ever leave a Litra, either the Torch, the Studio, or the Pro out of my bag. One is always going to be in my bag.
yeah,
Um, Even if I don't think I'm going to need it, I have it because something's going to happen. Like, I just want to add that little pop of light there. Or
yeah.
you're by water. What if we add, put a torch in the water and light you up in a different way? It's phenomenal that you just have all this creative freedom that you can't use with other lights.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that waterproofness comes in handy more than we think, especially, those shots around the water that you just showed. You could have,
Yes.
time comes next time you're over there, that area on Lake Erie, throwing a blue gel on that thing and
Yes.
dunking the studio in it, backlighting them. I mean, there's just the possibilities are endless now, and you don't have to worry about hiding the light. It's almost sometimes cool now to show the light being used in the frame.
Yes.
So I want to get into, we'll wrap this up here quickly, but I always like to leave the viewer on a good piece of advice, just because we've gotten to the point where, most of these people want to be if they're not quite there. What is something that you would, a good piece of advice that you would give to the viewer about getting into this industry at this time? I mean, there's a lot of different approaches, there's a lot of different things that we can do, but what is one piece of advice that has worked for you?
If you want to be a photographer, go for it. I mean, no one could tell you how or when or how good you need to be, or if you want it for a hobby, that's perfectly okay. If you want to do it pro, go do it pro, but don't let anyone limit you, and don't be afraid of lighting.
Yeah,
Go grab one of these and you could just play with it. You could move the light closer or further away. And again, because you're seeing the light in real time, whatever you're photographing, you're going to get that in camera as well.
for sure.
Because our cameras
Yeah,
meter light. We don't need light meters like we used to. Our cameras are very smart in metering. And then you just get to play with how that light is going to tell the story you want.
absolutely. So don't be afraid to go out there and just make it happen, right? I mean,
Yes.
whether
Yeah.
it's like people sometimes they feel like they have to invest a lot in gear before they can go out, and that's not necessarily true. There are
No.
resources everywhere, whether you're in school and you can just rent some stuff or take it out for the day. Ask a friend if they have an old camera that they're not using. I went to my parents' house last week and they had an old film camera laying there that they haven't used in years, and I'm like, "Hey, can I just have this?" Because they're not using it. And they're like, "Sure, why not?" Because I want to get into some film stuff. So just little things. I think I guess the point of that is there are so many different ways that you can get into it without fully investing financially right off the bat.
Yes. For
Yeah,
sure.
awesome, Carly. It was awesome chatting with you today. We were able to cover some really cool topics. Your images are amazing. Keep up the good work, and thank you always for supporting Litra. We always appreciate that.
Yeah. Thank you, Drew. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much, Carly. If you guys want more information on Carly, visit her website, carlysullens.com and inspiredphotoartist.com. That's your new site, right?
Yes. Yep.
Awesome. Yeah, so that's good information there. Your Instagram page is hooked to there, and then at Inspired Photo Artist as well. We can link that. We do have a question that just came in. I have changed my architecture career for full-time photography and videography, and it has been a challenge. A lot of thinking in these days. The key is to follow your dreams and never stop creating. A lot of thinking in those days. So this is past. So
Yeah.
yeah, you're right. Absolutely, man. He's from Uruguay, so I really appreciate you checking us out today. Thanks, man. Cheers to you. Yeah, he's just saying that basically following up with what you said, Carly. Just follow your dreams and don't be afraid to do it and never stop creating. So always love hearing that. Those little tiny ad libs that people put in like that are what makes this thing awesome. So again, Carly, thank you so much, guys. If you have questions for Carly, hit her up, direct message her, send her an email, visit her website. And Carly, we will talk to you soon. Keep up the good work.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Carly. See ya.
Bye bye.
All right, guys, that was awesome. That was Carly Sullens. she's a really, really talented portrait photographer. Some of the stuff she does is absolutely amazing. Thank you for that feedback there. And guys, thank you so much for watching. This has been Litra's Creative Corner. We will be back again at the same time next Thursday with another very special guest. I'm super excited to have him on. And yeah, we will talk to you guys soon. Peace.